Okay, welcome to the Reality Check with Charles Butler. We have a whole host of guests today here at Red State Talk Radio, and hope that you can kick back, enjoy the show, get ready because we're gonna turn up the volume, as the kids used to say. We're gonna bring on my good buddy Frank Venucio. I'm sure he's out here. Let me see where Frank is. Let's see. Yep, Frank is there as always. Hey, Frank, how you doing, man?
Charles, great being with you 1 week before the election.
1 week before the election, baby. Can you believe it? I mean, here we are 4 years later. I remember when we were just talking about Donald Trump being elected, and we were saying things were looking bleak, but the president he held true. And by the way, folks, I just want to tell you that Mr. Venucio is the president of the American Analysis of News and Media and the editor-in-chief of its major publication, the New York Analysis of Policy and Government. You know, Frank, I was looking at a article that you had written about the lefties in it looks like Town Hall, and it was a good article, man. Share with our audience a little bit about some of the context of the article and why you wrote it.
Well, one of the fascinating things, we've had Republicans and Democrats and liberals and conservatives in the past, but what we're seeing in the United States, particularly since the Obama administration, is something totally different. We're seeing people who have a totally different perspective on what type of country we should be. We've been kept strong by the Constitution. We've been kept free because of the Constitution. Even when there were terrible things that occurred in the history of our country, we eventually came to the realization that the freedoms of the Bill of Rights should apply to absolutely everybody. Now, what we're seeing with the left in the United States is a renunciation clearly of some of the key aspects of the Bill of Rights. For example, Chuck Schumer, who is the senior senator from the state of New York, minority leader of the United States Senate, introduced legislation back in 2012 saying that the First Amendment should be limited in many cases. He didn't want it to apply to paid political speech. We're seeing people who want to abolish the Second Amendment, which the founding fathers clearly said the purpose of the Second Amendment is to protect the other amendments, the other portions of the Bill of Rights. So we're seeing a real change in what the nature of politics is in the United States.
Okay.
We're seeing a renunciation of the concept of individual rights, which has kept this nation strong and free for a long, long time.
Yeah, it has. But, when you have people, you have a president. Remember this, President Obama, not candidate Obama. President Obama said from the Oval Office that the Constitution is outmoded and outdated, and we needed a government more like the UK's government, where he could be prime minister and dictate, because he was the ruling party, what policies were. People have no understanding really of the great freedoms we have here in the United States. There's a reason that you have so many British expats in the U.S. There's a reason you have people coming here from Asia and Africa. There's a reason that you have people who come here from France, which is a socialist state. People really don't appreciate the kind of government we have and what the government represents. I look at these people like AOC, who talks about stacking the court. This woman, I wonder where this woman received her education. When President Trump's nominating Ms. Justice Barrett was not stacking the court. It wasn't a breach of any protocol. These Democrats, they lie. And what makes it so interesting, I have a friend. She's, fairly intelligent woman, but, her education, today, Frank, We have people who are educated stupidly, and you have this stupidity coming from their classrooms. They're educated wrongly and stupidly, and it's like whatever I think is right because it is in today's context. It has nothing to do with facts. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has nothing to do with history, but it's what some professor has professed in his or her own opinion is truth. And we didn't have that in classrooms before. You know,
those are great. That's an absolutely great point, because let's understand what happens when you stack a Supreme Court. The concept of the judiciary, of the separation of powers in the United States, is that no one organization, no one group, no one person can become all powerful like you had in Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia or down in Venezuela or Cuba. When you stack the court, that means the President of the United States, along with his supporters in the Senate, eliminate that independent branch of government. They become nothing more than a bunch of supporters for whoever happens to be in power at the time. In essence, you are eliminating democracy in the country. And for Vice President Biden and for Kamala Harris to talk openly about stacking the United States Supreme Court, what they're telling you is that they're going to eliminate any possibility of freedom in the United States. They will be all powerful. They will be able to do things like change voting regulations, for example, to make it sure that they never lose another election. They will be able to amend the Constitution in ways that eliminate your right to bear arms, your right to freedom of speech. This is what they're really saying when they're talking about stacking the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, but what's not true is Barrett's appointment to the Supreme Court is not an example of stacking the court. But that's what they keep saying.
Of course not.
No,
of course not. And of course, the reason they say that with such impunity is because they know the media will back them up on it. But the fact of the matter is, we've had in numerous cases during election years, presidents exercising their constitutional duty to appoint a Supreme Court justice with the advice and consent of the Senate. To portray this as stacking the court is absurd. And the only reason that it has such traction is because the media refuses to have a really correct discussion of the reality of what this actually is. It's merely a president doing his duty the way all of his predecessors have up until now.
Well, what tickles me is Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her, Frank, it was really interesting. I don't know if you know this, if I mentioned this to you, but the day after you were on and the Wednesday, so the next day, I did a story on Ruth Bader Ginsburg and why she should have allowed Barack Obama to appoint a Supreme Court justice. Okay, I did this big, about half an hour. The next Friday, that's Thursday, Friday, she dies. Isn't that funny? But she dies, right? Everything that I had said all of a sudden is the Democrats and RBG's worst outcome, that Donald Trump gets to replace her, the most liberal, the craziest justice we've ever had on the court, with a brilliant conservative woman who is 180 degrees out from her. I would say even 207 degrees out from where she was and the things that she stood for. And I am so glad that the president chose Justice Barrett because she's brilliant. She's not a talking head. She's not a placeholder. She's not a token appointment. She's probably the most brilliant appointment to the Supreme Court in modern history in terms of
and allow me, if I may, Charles, to
jurisprudence.
commit a bit of heresy on your program.
Uh-oh.
We've seen that this lionization of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, God.
The same Ruth Bader Ginsburg who has said on a number of occasions, particularly during a speech in Cairo, Egypt, that if she were choosing the Constitution for a new country, she would not choose the Constitution of the United States
Right.
as a model.
Right.
We're told that this woman was so selfless. Well, if she was so selfless and so enamored with the political perspective that she espoused, and by the way, Supreme Court justices shouldn't be espousing political perspectives. They should be enforcing the law as it is written, not as they want it to be, not as their personal perspectives dictate. If she wanted to, if she was so dedicated to her beliefs and not to her own personal power, then she should have resigned, considering her age, during the Obama administration and allowed Obama to appoint a justice with a similar perspective of hers.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, she chose the path of retaining power, her own personal power, and stayed on to the next administration.
But I really think this is my thinking on that. See, Hillary Clinton encouraged Bill Clinton to appoint her to the bench. Why would a president who is a conservative, for the most part, a conservative Democrat from Arkansas, why would he appoint this wacky liberal chick who headed the ACLU to the bench? I mean, it just didn't make any sense for me at the time, although I was extremely angry. It didn't make any sense to me at the time. But more importantly, you flip forward and you go, okay, so now everything's leaning toward Hillary Clinton is going to be president in 2016. Hillary Clinton's going to be president. Everyone's saying that. All the polls, all the politicos, everybody in Washington, everybody outside of Washington, get out of the way. We're going to have Hillary as president. And now Hillary is going to make her replacement, right? Didn't happen. It threw a nuclear bomb in the middle of all of their game plans. And so even so much so that Ruth Bader Ginsburg came out and criticized the president. She apologized for her rudeness, her crudeness, and her unprofessionalism in criticizing President Trump. Remember that?
Yeah, one of the fascinating things with the Hillary Clinton-Donald Trump campaign was the fact that so many things that were done by the left that they believed they would be immune to any kind of scrutiny or prosecution over, those plans got upset pretty radically, didn't they?
Oh, yeah.
And the vehemence with which the left has attacked the Trump administration pretty much is out of desperation because, as you said, they expected there would be a Hillary Clinton administration, probably would have been one of the most crooked administrations of all time. And they knew they would be able to get away with everything that they've done in the past. So when Donald Trump unexpectedly took the 2016 election, they became in a state of panic.
Oh, yeah.
Because their past misdeeds would be exposed.
Oh, yeah.
And indeed, when you look at the Russian collusion charges, you have to consider that as a dramatic smokescreen to divert public attention and the interest and the energy of the Department of Justice away from prosecuting their crimes of the past with this nonsense charge of Russian collusion against the Trump administration.
You know, Frank, even, here we are 4 years. You have people who are walking around who destroyed evidence of a major investigation. You have Susan Rice. You have Hillary Clinton's chief of staff. You have all of these people and Comey who not only destroyed or allowed them to erase their computers and their cell phones. And why would he do that? I mean, first of all, why would he do that? He destroyed them. They grind them up and threw them away. Why would they do that if there was a major cover up? But what pisses me off is that you have people running around who are still talking about a Russian collusion. There's a new movie out. It's called The Plot Against the President. And I watched it this weekend. And it was really, really interesting. And it really focused on how Devin Nunes would not ease up on requesting documents from the DOJ, the FBI. But I think the director of the FBI has to go.
Well, he certainly does. It looks as though he sat on all sorts of evidence for a long period of time and frankly didn't do his job, period. Even if you assume that there was no ulterior political motive to what he did or didn't do, the fact that he didn't execute his responsibilities is sufficient enough to demand that he leave office.
The guy, I just cannot believe that this guy set on that information on Hunter Biden. And I don't even know how it was or why it was released. I guess it was released because the partner, this is starting to make sense now. The partner, Budulinsky, I guess he was going to come out and tell that Hunter Biden had committed these atrocities and that Joe Biden knew about it. So they came clean. And that includes Barr and the FBI. Because this guy was getting ready to come and say, hey, look, their emails. I have emails. I have phones. Joe Biden certainly was in on the Russian collusion. He was certainly being paid by China. He certainly was being paid by the Ukraine. He knew about these deals. He is the big guy. Amazing, dude.
At a time when China has caused more worldwide devastation than anything else in history, when we see the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping, who recently gave a speech to his nation's Marine Corps, saying that prepare for war, when we see China doing double-digit increases in its defense budget year after year, to think that an American vice president took money to enrich himself and his family from China tells you all you need to know about why Joe Biden is not qualified to not only to be president of the United States, but why he should not instead be in front of a grand jury explaining his actions.
Well, that's not going to happen because he's part of the privilege. People get up and say, well, Joe Biden, he would never put his hands down a woman's dress. I'm telling you, that young lady, I can't remember her name right now, but as fine as she was, if she'd given me an opportunity to given me to go ahead to put my hand down her dress, hey, I'm all American boy. I'm sorry. I'm not. There's no girl in me. That woman was a good looking woman in her day. She was gorgeous, man. I'd say, I was like, God, she is hot. Shoot. So, when they go, oh, well, Joe Biden would never, the hell if he wouldn't. The hell if he would. Joe Biden would never do that. I can't believe that.
It's one thing for Joe Biden to go after a mature woman, 21 years of age and all that sort of thing. But when Biden goes to, as vice president, went to, various events and he put his hands on underage girls, when you saw how he made young ladies, 14 years old, feel dramatically uncomfortable, isn't it amazing that our press, which just loves a good scandal, loves a good sex story, decided not to say anything at all about it during the entire campaign?
Yeah, well, that's just Joe. Remember, that's just Joe. That's just Joe. That's just Joe. That's just Joe Biden. He's harmless. Please, he has a penis just like everybody else, and I'm sure it used to get hard. Anyway, but Frank.
Well, of course, then we have that wonderful story about Joe Biden, who loudly bragged on national TV that he has the best voter fraud operation that's ever been conceived. Kind of fascinating, isn't it, Charles, how that story just kind of vanished, isn't it? How all the stories about Joe Biden, who just told us that he's running against George Bush, that
George
story
Bush.
just vanished.
We're on the air, man.
Have you ever seen a more full court press on the part of the media to hide the obvious illegalities and inability of a man to be president than what they've done with Joe Biden?
Right. Well, do you think that this guy is going to have a chance of winning, hiding out in the basement? I heard CNN last night said that Joe's in trouble in PA. They said Joe's in trouble in PA, man.
Here's a sort of prediction. The entire election is going to come down to the city of Philadelphia. Tell you why. Outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is going to be pretty solid for Donald Trump. But we know that Philadelphia in the past has been a hotbed of illegal voting and fraud. We know that in one prior election, 120% of registered voters were voting in Philadelphia, and 100% of those were voting for the Democrat candidate. J. Christian Adams, who was a civil rights attorney with the Department of Justice, said that voter intimidation tactics that he saw and voter fraud tactics he saw in Philadelphia were among the worst he ever saw, including during the worst of the days in the Old South. So I think that if Pennsylvania is a crucial state in the 2020 election, and Philadelphia is the population hub of Pennsylvania, this whole election comes down to how much dishonesty there will be in the voting in the city of Philadelphia.
Well, there's going to be a lot, bro. There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot.
We are going to see on election day whether or not we're going to have a president that night or not. Right now, it looks as though this counting can go on for quite some time afterwards. The longer the counting goes on, the more possibility of fraud that you could have. And of course, this is nothing new. The Democratic Party has always been the party, frankly, of voting shenanigans, going all the way back to the 18th century, to the 19th century, rather. You know, the old thing about New York, where all the immigrants are coming off the boat and immediately registered to vote and told to vote early and vote often. We've seen in the state of Florida, where Michael Bloomberg openly flouts the law and offers to pay the debts of convicted felons who have been released but still owe money, saying, if you vote, well, then I'm going to pay your debts back. An open violation of the law, particularly since Bloomberg has made no secret who he's demanding that these people vote for.
Right.
Will all of these fraudulent tactics, all these illegal tactics be successful?
No.
We'll have to stay tuned and see.
No, they won't be. They won't be. They won't be, Frank. Well, Frank, we got another minute here, and want you to go ahead and summarize these things for us. But what do you think of my assessment of where the vote is? And I say that we are right where we were last year. If any poll out there said that Donald Trump is in the margin of error, that's a win for Donald Trump. The other thing is, I think that Trump's going to win this thing.
Right, because if you notice, the polls always undercount the Trump votes. They certainly did it in 2016, and they traditionally do that, by the way, with Republican voters to begin with.
Right.
A lot of the polling setups seem to be overly concentrated on major urban areas,
right,
which is the low point for GOP voters.
Right.
So they do tend to, by a minimum of 3%, perhaps by a maximum of 6%, undercount the Trump vote going into Tuesday's election.
Hey, well, look, man, thanks again for being with me. We'll be circling back on election day. Are you going to be with me on election day? Or are you going to be running around? What's the deal?
I wouldn't miss being with you on election day for the world, Charles.
Well, thank you, Frank. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Hey, look,
take care.
See you on election day, my friend. All right, bye. That was Mr. Frank Venucio, my buddy in hanging out, my buddy in crime, and just a wonderful talk show host, TV guy. We're going to bring on Dr. Michael Butler. Dr. Butler is talking about Pelosi, when Pelosi says that the relief agreement could happen this week, and she accuses Republicans of moving the goalposts. Now, I don't think that's the case from what I hear. I mean, Nancy is half-stepping. I want my money if I'm entitled to it. But she's talking about we feed them. The girl is absolutely bonkers. That's when she went off on Wolf on CNN. She said, well, we feed them. You know, she's so totally out of touch with the American people. It's frightening. But we'll see what Dr. Michael Butler has to say. He's a public policy analyst of economics, an economics expert, a professor of finance at the Stockton University in New Jersey. New Jersey, that's a liberal state. Sometimes they elected Chris Christie as governor, so people there pretty decent, pretty smart. He's a featured columnist in Newsmax, and that's where I know him from. The Hill and the Western Journal and Town Hall. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Butler. How are you?
I'm doing well, Charles. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Hey, so we feed them, huh?
Yeah.
We feed them. I mean, what is wrong with Nancy Pelosi? She's 80 years old. When is she going to step down, dude? She's 80 years old. What is wrong with these people? Clyburn, he's 78 years old. Joe Biden said, why don't they go somewhere and enjoy their retirement instead of, wasting time, spending time with and McConnell, he's 70 something years old, 78, 79 years old. Whoa. He ran for re-election, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you, certainly these people are getting up in years, and it's time to bring in some younger people. Let me just comment on your last caller, if I may. I think that the polls on Trump are probably about 3 to 5% off. So if Biden is not ahead by at least 6% in those polls, he's probably behind. Couple of reasons for that, real quick. Number one, the samples are biased in that they include more Democrats and fewer Republicans in the sample, so it biases it. Secondly, most of the polls, except Rasmussen and that Trafalgar, most of the polls sample registered voters, not likely voters. There are a number of registered voters who are going to say, well, I don't think either candidate is good. I'm not going to vote for either of them. But they still give an opinion. The other polls, like Rasmussen, uses likely voters, so it's a little more accurate. Thirdly, there is a fear of from Trump supporters to say that they are for Trump. I saw a study done last week that said 62% of Trump voters, Trump supporters, are afraid to put a Trump sign in their front yard. And they're even more afraid to bring up on polling who they're going to vote for. So if Biden's not up by at least 6 points, he's probably behind. Now, the next question about Nancy Pelosi. So we're looking at a stimulus package. We passed one, actually a series of 3 back in the spring. That was both a good thing and a bad thing. On the good side, it ended the recession very quickly and started a V-shaped recovery in May, June, July, and August. Now the recovery is starting to flatten a little bit, and we need a little bit of stimulus, which is why they're talking about the second package now. The first stimulus was a good thing in that it brought us out of a recession. It was a bad thing in that we just spent $3 trillion that we don't have, so we have to borrow it. As a result, the deficit for the fiscal year 2020, which ended September 30th, was over $3 trillion. Add that to the public debt, which was $23 trillion, is now up to $26 trillion. Is that a problem? Most economists would say if the public debt is less than 1 year's GDP, you can handle it. Current GDP is going to be in about the 20.5 trillion range, so we're way above 1 year's GDP. We have to be very careful with incurring any more deficit spending, which is why the stimulus package is so difficult now. Nancy Pelosi and the House of Representatives originally said we want $3.4 trillion in the next stimulus package. The president said, because the deficit is so large and the debt's so large, I really don't want to go over 1 trillion. The Senate, which is more conservative, wanted to keep it in the 500-600 billion range. President Trump is willing to compromise to bring that number up. His latest proposal, I think, was up to 1.8 trillion, which I think is a heck of a compromise. Nancy Pelosi came down to 2.2, and she won't budge. I don't think anything will be done before the election, mostly because Nancy Pelosi would view that as a victory for the president, and she doesn't want to give the president victory. So I don't think anything will be done till after next week, and how much is done remains to be seen. Somewhat will be somewhat influenced by who wins the election and what happens to the House of Representatives and the Senate.
Well, I think there are going to be some surprises in the House, and I think there'll be surprises in the Senate. I think
I
Republicans are going to
agree.
keep the Senate, and I think that Republicans are going to take a lot of House seats. And the reason we're not hearing about these House races is because I think people are going. Republicans are doing very well in those local elections. Even here in Illinois, the Republicans tend to be doing very well in local elections. It looks like they're going to make some inroads, but and it's
Yeah.
interesting that the black vote, especially the black male vote, which has largely been ignored the last four election cycles. When you look at the election cycle of 2018 or 2008, it was a given that all black people were going to vote for Barack Obama. I didn't vote for him to keep in place my record of never voting for him. So I've never voted for him as a state senator, as a U.S. senator, nor as the president of the United States, which he won twice. So my record is perfect in not supporting that socialist Barack insane Obama. I heard him speak earlier today, and he was at a Biden rally, and he was just lying. Oh, the president said our soldiers and sailors are suckers and losers. And he just goes on. They just go on lying and lying on Trump. And you have these sycophants out here who believe this nonsense. And so you never get to the truth because the premise of these people is a basic lie. You see what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? So
Yes, absolutely. And, Charles, to bring up, I think, a real good point. In prior elections, the African-American vote was very heavily for the Democrats. The Republicans were always lucky to get 8 to 10% of that. President Trump came in and he said, look, minorities, the Hispanics, African-Americans, they really don't want handouts. They don't want free welfare. They want free food stamps. They don't want free health care. They take it because they don't have much of a choice. President Trump said, what I'm going to give them is what they really want. And what they really want is the opportunity to earn enough income to be able to pay for their own food, their own shelter, their own health care. Right. And that's what President Trump did. Right. By stimulating the economy the way he did, he brought unemployment down to 3.5%. That's a historic low. Minority unemployment for African Americans and Hispanics also at record lows. So these groups are now seeing opportunity. And I saw a couple polls that said President Trump may end up with up to 20% of the African American vote and up to 35 or 40% of the Hispanic vote, simply because he's not giving them free stuff. He's giving them the opportunity to earn their own, and they have their own dignity, just like everybody wants. That's what the minority groups want. That's what President Trump has given them. I think Trump is going to do very well in those groups, and I think there'll be enough to carry him into office. And I hope his coattails are long enough that he can flip the House of Representatives and increase the majority in the Senate.
Michael, what you have to understand is President Trump is a real American. President Trump understands the average American. He's not a politician. He gets things done. He doesn't talk a good game. He gets things done. See, Trump is like Nixon. Nixon said to black people in 1968 and 72, hey, you need to be part of the American mainstream, not in the street burning houses down and burning buildings down and burning businesses down. You need to have your own businesses. Then you wouldn't be burning businesses down, right? So that's what Nixon. Exactly. That's what Nixon put forth. Republicans come forth with. See, every politician and every president knew, because Daniel Patrick Moynihan told them, that the Great Deal policies would destroy, let me repeat, would destroy the black family. This country had a federal policy that destroyed the black family. It neutered the black man. It took him out of the employment arena. You couldn't get hired. Like today, I know black men who have 2 degrees, 3 degrees from Ivy League schools who cannot get hired by anybody. And that's been going on for the last 30 years. Their wife had been the primary breadwinner because they can't get hired. So either they start their own businesses or they don't get hired. I'm not talking about underemployed. I'm talking about unemployed, dude. And nobody talks about that. Why? Because black people don't have the political and economic infrastructure to do like Jews and put their plight out front. And so, but these are things we talk about in black intelligentsia, in the black intellectual scene. See, we have 2 Americas here. My world is not a white guy's world. I live in the white guy's world. I understand the white man's numbers and all that, but most of them don't see my side of the equation from the black side and what's going on with black people. Just like Black Lives Matter and the police and all this stuff being hyped up today. This is nothing new for black people. This has been going on since I was a boy, and I'm 70 years old. Black men being shot. Well, they used to be beaten, not shot by cops. They used to be beaten. I saw my cousin as a young boy. I was about 8 or 9 years old. My cousin was walking down the street. We were waving to him because he told my dad he was coming over to visit one Sunday, and the 2 cops run out of the police station, picked my cousin up, who was a Korean vet. He weighed about 130 pounds at the most. These 2 cops were over 200 pounds apiece, took him into the police station, beat the crap out of him, and let him out the next morning. And he couldn't go to work because he was all beat up. So he lost his job. I mean, these are the things that black people have endured for decades without anyone addressing these issues. And then you have people like Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham who talk about we're not a racist nation. Well, we may not be. Well, I can't say that because I look at the policies and I look at the enforcement, and I can tell you that the greatest civil rights presidents we had until this president, Donald J. Trump, was Eisenhower and Nixon. They were great civil rights presidents, followed by Reagan, Bush, and Bush, in my opinion. And I can document that. I can make a great case for that. The worst civil rights presidents we ever had was Barack Obama. The second one was Jimmy Carter. And the third one was William Jefferson Clinton. And I can document all this, using, just history. So look, getting back to this election, black people, Trump is giving black people what they want, which is an opportunity. They don't want a handout. They want an opportunity. This so-called free money is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. It's like the $1,200 they sent to people. What can you do with $1,200 that you got 6 months ago? Hello?
Not much.
Hello? $1,200. Listen, what Trump did with the illegal immigrants and the illegal, I know Mexicans who came here to the U.S. They're not U.S. citizens. They work for UPS. They work for FedEx. Do you know how much a FedEx truck driver can make? Do you have any idea?
No.
6 figures, dude. Dude told me, and he showed me. He showed me his pay stub. He was on schedule to make $120,000, dude, for the year. 120. He's a Mexican citizen. He's building a big hacienda in Mexico, in not Chichen Itza, up by Monterey. It's up by Monterey in the I can't call it the state right now, but he's building a home up there. And he said, hey, the drug dealers have said they're going to leave him alone. Because he's built this is a Federal Express driver, right? He's built a community center for the people in his town, and the drug dealers have come to him and said, okay, we'll work with you, we'll put a little money in this, and we'll leave you alone when you come home. But he's driving a FedEx truck here, taking a 6-figure job from some guy or woman. And Trump's put a stop to this mess. The H-1B visas. Right, exactly. A white guy in Silicon Valley couldn't get a job for all the damn Indians they're bringing in here. You got nothing but Indians who come in to Silicon Valley. They live in a house, 3 or 4 families, and move on. They're totally transient.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good thing President Trump came in and put a stop to that. Recall when he got in, there were some months 80, 90, 100,000 people illegally crossing the southern border. Even though the Democrats fought him on that, he was able to put a stop to it. The Democrats wouldn't Democrats in Congress wouldn't allow any money to build a wall. He figured out a way to get around that, and he's building the wall. He's the first president in a long time to really put Americans first.
That's
and
exactly
he
right.
says that often. It's time
It's
to
right.
stop apologizing for being an American and start being proud of being an American, and by putting Americans first. And all of his policies, his economic policies, his national defense policies, are all geared to think of America first rather than this globalism where we're all the same and you have to think of everybody the same. Well, the thing is, we're not all the same. Americans have done what they've done, and they have a right to the fruits of their labor. And President Trump was making sure that Americans are put first. And he did that with everything he's done. And now New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Michigan, California, Washington, Oregon, those states are keeping their workers clamped down, won't let them go back to work, and it's slowing down the recovery. It's more than a coincidence, I think, that each of those states has a Democratic governor. I'm not sure that there's politics coming into play here. But look, this virus, the number of cases is going up, and I understand that. The cold weather's coming. We all have to be careful. But the hospitalization rate is going way down, and the fatalities rate are going down. And not to make light of that, if one person dies, it's really too much. But we bring in the fatality rate down. We're getting this virus to the point where we can live with it. And it looks like we're only about a month or so away from having a vaccine ready to go out to the public. Again, President Trump, not a politician, a business person, he sped up the whole process. And normally, once the FDA approves of a vaccine, then the companies start to ramp up production. It takes 4 to 6 months to get a large number of doses out. President Trump talked with the pharmaceutical companies, and they said, look, we're fairly confident this is going to go through. We have to go through the trials and everything and do what we're supposed to, but we're fairly confident based on what we've seen, this will go through. So President Trump took a gamble. They said, okay, back in June, let's start producing these vaccines. So if we get an approval in November, we don't have to wait 4 to 6 months to ramp up production. We'll have already made this. We can get it out. By the end of the year, there'll be millions of doses of vaccines available to people. And by early next year, probably before March or April, there'll be enough vaccines for everybody, all Americans, and we'll be able to get this virus really under control. In the meantime, we've got to minimize our losses here, and we can't keep the economy shut down. That's causing more of a health problem than what this virus is going to cause. There's more depression now, anxiety, drug use, alcohol abuse, domestic violence, suicide rates are going up. The longer these governors keep their states shut down, and I'm in New Jersey, we're shut down here. Businesses can only operate at 25% of capacity. It's creating some terrible conditions here in New Jersey, and it's hurting the economy nationally. We've got to get everything moving again. I don't think the stimulus is going to get passed, so let's get these states open. Let's get back to as close to normal, as safely as we possibly can, and let's try to move forward and deal with this thing.
Yeah, well, I think we can move forward and deal with it. It's going to be, I think it's going to be interesting. I think that when the American people look at Sleepy Joe, it's really interesting. Joe Biden, and Trump pointed this out the other night, and he should have been pointing this out all the time. Joe Biden's talking about what he's going to do. We're going to help black businesses. What the hell have you been doing for the last 47 years? We're going to help black businesses. So you have what's a generation? 20 years?
20, 25 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have two generations of black folks that have been trying to get into business. Joe Biden has an HBCU right in his backyard. Do you think he's ever visited there? Do you think he's ever funneled money to that school? The answer is hell no. Joe Biden stood on the floor of the Senate and said, I don't want my children going to a racial jungle. How racist could that be? I mean, it's one thing to say, I want my children to go to a private school. He said, I don't want my children going to a racial jungle. I mean, dude, I mean, if
I
that's
think
not,
that's horrible. I think it's horrible. I don't know how he gets away with saying that. And I know the press is protecting him. But really, some of this stuff has to get out so Americans can be informed of what they're voting for. Look, Biden's been in politics for 47 years. He was vice president for 8 years. He had plenty of time where he could have dealt with an immigration problem, dealt with these historically black colleges. And you're right, he's got Delaware State right in his backyard. And he really hasn't done anything to help them. But who did? President Trump signed with these historically black colleges that they don't have to come back every year and ask for funding. He gave them more than they asked for, and he made a 10-year commitment to them so they don't have to keep coming back. And once they have that financial stability, they can then start to improve. And they're very good schools as it is now, but they can continue to improve and expand and attract more
Let me
students.
tell
I
you
think
something.
education is really the key
No.
to helping
No.
everybody.
No.
If you're, like
No.
Jesse Jackson once said, if you're in poverty, you have to educate your way out of it. I was born to immigrant parents myself. You know, we didn't have a whole lot either, but I listened to everybody that said, educate your way out of it. And that's exactly what I did. So getting money to these colleges is extremely important to provide education to everybody,
Michael,
so that they can educate their way out of it,
Michael,
move forward in the world,
Michael,
start their own businesses, get good jobs, and not have to rely on the government for their survival.
Michael, the real
dependency
issue
that the Democrats have put some of these communities in, where they depend on the government for survival, oftentimes lasts a lifetime, and some cases it spans
Michael,
generations. My kids went to an inner city high school, very racially diverse. The Caucasians were less than 30% of the total. My boys played football, so I got very friendly with the kids on the football team. And I see the tough conditions that these people have to live in, and they're dependent on the government, and their mother was dependent on the government, and their grandmother was dependent on the government, and they're locked into this. Education is really the key for them to get out of poverty, become a contributing member of society, be happy and fulfilled with life. So helping these historically black colleges was a marvelous thing for President Trump to do. I don't know why President Obama didn't do it in the 8 years he and Biden were in office,
Mike,
but it took President Trump to come along
Mike,
and finally secure funding for these schools.
Okay, Mike, come up for a breath. The deal is this. President Obama has always hated HBCUs. He's always demeaned HBCUs. He's always denigrated HBCUs. He's always denigrated black people. So when black people talk to me about Barack Obama, if they want to call anybody the negative, pejorative Uncle Tom, it would be a picture of Barack Insane Obama. Barack Obama has never done anything for black people, ever, in his whole entire political career. The guy here in Chicago, there were black men who supported Barack, very powerful black men in both the private and public sector, who went out on a limb for Barack Obama. And I know them personally. And when he became president, do you think he gave them the Medal of Freedom? He gave the Medal of Freedom to a sick, a degenerate homosexual who was filleting men in a damn park restrooms. I mean, this boy Obama is such a degenerate person that his morals, his values are questionable. I don't have anything positive to say about Barack Obama. Barack Obama allowed black colleges to go out of business. He did not try to help them financially. He gave money to white majority or Hispanic majority schools. The guy was horrible. I hated the dude, man. I tell you. And so when you talk about all of these things about Biden and Obama, they're liars. And but the thing that's really gets me is that I said this, and just process this for a second. We got 3 minutes. I want you to process this for a second. I predicted in 2008 the election of Barack Obama would be the first major decoupling of black Americans from the Democrat Party. And with Barack's lack of action to help black Americans, that's why black Americans are saying, what? I didn't get anything when Barack Obama was running. And if we were ever to get anything, it should have been under Barack Obama. And if we didn't get anything under Barack, when is it going to happen? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's
I guess they saw that it finally did happen under President Trump.
Exactly. And when they see all of the progress, I had people tell me, this is what I had people tell me before the pandemic hit. For the first time in my adult life, everybody in my family had a job. We had a great Christmas. I could buy my wife the Christmas present I'd wanted to buy her for the last 20 years. I was looking forward to Easter and buying my children and my grandchildren clothes for Easter. And then the pandemic hit. And who put the pandemic on us? Our worst enemy, China, the people that Joe Biden is bought and paid by. Hey, man, we got about a minute I'm going to give you, and we're going to round this up, okay?
Okay, I just want to say to everybody listening out there, they heard everything you had to say, and I had to say, when it goes time, if you haven't voted yet early, when it comes time to vote, I would say to everybody, take a look at the policies of both presidents, the president and Biden. Take a look at their policies. And even if you don't like President Trump personally, because he's not the best communicator in the world, and he says some things that make everybody's stomach churn, even if you think he's not the best person, you have to agree that his policies are what's best. I would much rather have a not so good person who has good policies rather than somebody who's really nice who has terrible policies. Jimmy Carter was a real nice guy. Yep. Terrible policies.
Terrible policies.
Bill Clinton was a horrible person, but he had good policies. President Trump, I think, is a good person, but many people don't agree with that. They don't think he's a good person. You can't disagree with his policies. They're right for America today.
All right, man. Hey, thanks again. Appreciate you. All right.
My pleasure, Charles.
You're welcome. Again. Dr. Michael Butler, folks. Hey, look, we'll be back tomorrow. We got some guests coming in. We're going to do it. So tune in. We'll be here. Broadcasting live. Well, we're off the air with Red State, that's for sure. And let's see if I was up on Red State. Red State Talk Radio. But it's been good. It's been great having you guys out there. I'm sorry that I couldn't interact with you much today as it done. And, that's what we do here at Red State Talk Radio and out on the Reality Check with Charles Butler. That's live, streaming live. So we will, like I said, circle back tomorrow and get some things done. Let's see. What did it say? Forget. Good to see you back. Bill Clinton had horrible policies. Yeah, Bill was all right. It's all right, Robert. He was all right. Hey, look, guys, be good. Take care. I'll be with you again tomorrow. Take care. Thanks for tuning in.